and a CPA,
Right.
rather unique, right?
Right.
So, so when you went to law school, did you know that you wanted to be a CPA, or was it the other way around? How did that work?
When I went to law school, I knew I was going to be a CPA because I went to law school specifically so I could sit down for the CPA and not have to pay for it for a second master's degree in accounting. So the whole idea was I take the tax courses in law school, and then I will go ahead and use those tax courses to sit in the CPA, and that's what I eventually ended up doing. I passed the CPA and then I passed the bar.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
To see that, and it really says about your intelligence. And I see there are people that go into MD programs. They also get a PhD at the same time. So anyway, my hat's off to you for.
Well, I try, but thank you, Michael, for having me here this morning, and thank you for all the listeners today. We wanted to talk about some of the things going on in the community, specifically Miracle Mile and some of the changes in Coral Gables. So I love the opportunity to be here to talk about that.
Well, my pleasure. And as we walk down Miracle Mile, all right. Certainly, it's been different in the last year, but there's been a lot of changes that have been going on in the last half a dozen years. So tell us about some of the things that some of the changes and things that people are concerned about in Coral Gables.
This has been a running debate now. Really over 3 years, but it heat up after October, when the commissioner originally brought this issue up for consideration. And I can tell you that the vast majority of the residents in Coral Gables are against a modification of the mile that would allow for significant height. I think you have over 200 people show up at this commission meetings. I think the commissioners have listened to some of those concerns. I think you have one of them in particular who has capped or has requested a cap of the height at what's called 3 FAR, meaning you cannot go higher than 3 stories on the mile. There's already a building in the mile there. I think the problem that you have is that there's a disconnect between what the residents want and what the commission is putting forward. And the residents essentially said, we don't want to change. We want the mile to be kept and be maintained the way it is today. We like the small scale, a small entrance, traditional Miracle Mile look that is being sort of the center of the artery of the city for such a long period of time since it was conceived originally. And I think the commission is trying in a thoughtful way. I got to give them that. They have really come up with different solutions, and there was 3 commissioners who came up with different solutions to try to address some of those concerns while at the same time passing this through. But I don't think it seems like a solution looking for a problem. That seems to be a running theme.
Are the neighbors concerned about the streets that are north of Miracle Mile, where there's a lot of tall buildings?
They're concerned more broadly about the interaction between that high growth, and it goes from north of Miracle Mile to south of Miracle Mile, all the way through Ponce, all the way to US 1, and as the US 1 corridor comes down all the way through the Gables. And they have seen massive structures, especially in US 1, go up, that are, in my sense and the sense of many of the residents, just inconsistent with the way the Gables is, or the way it's supposed to look like. And here's the main issue you have is, if you have these very, very tall structures right next to very, very small, 17 square foot, 1,700 square foot homes, and you have a skyscraper almost that is 14 stories, 15 stories tall. There used to be a time in Coral Gables in which you couldn't go higher than 2 or 3 stories. And that's what they have come to love and like about the Gables. And it seems that we're losing that. And that's the reaction.
A perfect example on US 1, there used to be a hotel that was there, right near the university. And I drove by there the other day. I almost broke my neck trying to look out the window to look to the top of this.
The visual is horrible, because what happens is, depending where you are, and because of the way the curve, the road curves, if you look at the Gables Station building, it almost looks like it's leaning on you because there's no setback. And I think I had one of the residents tell me that He knows the original developer, and even the developer said maybe we should have done a little setback to the building because it's just such an imposing structure right on the mall itself. And the issue with, I'm sorry, right on the US one itself, the issue with a mile or what's coming in, what has been proposed, essentially is going to 4 stories. Okay, you're going to have a higher frontage that's going to look that's going to be a retail frontage, right? And then you can have 3 stories on top of that, with the possibility of a terrace, and then a setback at the end. All that is very technical, but what it does mean is that it will be a significant change from what is there now.
So, but most of these projects that have been proposed usually have retail stores on the bottom.
Correct.
And then up top,
you have residential.
Residential. Are there any real effective retail stores that are not on the first floor?
And you've hit it on the head here, right? So we have Obzone, part of the craft section, which is just south of where the City National Bank and the Publix is in there in downtown. The commission just voted on that either. They're not. I mean, I don't get to vote on that yet, but they have done it. They have rezoned and redeveloped, and there's several buildings going up near the village of Merrick Park. Okay, all of that has, or a significant portion of that has, bottom retail. So there's a lot of pressures on the mile because there's so much competition along the way. There are so many other choices to go to that weren't there before. The mile was sort of had its own monopoly on retail on Coral Gables for a very long time, and you're seeing the effects of that. Tag teamed with everyone going into online to buy a lot of the things that they needed, along with the cityscape changes that were done there, along with modifications due to the pandemic. So it's a combination of factors that has deteriorated the way the mile looks and the effects it looks today. But we're being myopic because we're making a decision that's going to affect the mile for the next 30 years, that will destroy what we know it to be today, by virtue of just looking at the situation today on the ground, which is not a realistic situation.
So as we know, during the last 12, 13 months, people's shopping habits have changed.
Correct.
Now, we know that had already started years before, but it's certainly been accentuated.
Right.
So the landowners that now don't have tenants in there, right, are saying, wait a second, there's got to be some better way.
Right. And at least that is the worry. That is the concern.
Thank you, Denise. Would you like some?
Yeah, absolutely. Cuban coffee in the morning. That's
the most important person here at Community News.
So look, that is a concern that the commission espouses, right? That you have a few developers aggregating property on the mile to build hotels, to build all the things that would essentially create a higher footprint. And this is their intentions to sort of moderate the changes. I think that possibility has existed there for 20 years. I don't think that the possibility has been undertaken. I think there's a lot of high buildings going around in all the areas of the mile. I don't think it's a real concern, okay, today. And but what they're trying to do is modify what currently exists. And the real danger, and the danger that most residents see, is that it will create sort of a canyon effect down the mile, as it has happened in other areas in Miami, especially in the Brickell area, and especially down in South Beach. And it will destroy the small-scale, charming aspect of the mile that it's what most residents have come to love and appreciate. And we know, even in South Miami here where you are, if the commission really wants to keep things as they are, they can. Okay, there's nothing that's forcing, putting a gun to their head that says that this needs to pass, and that is what has occurred. I think if somebody gives me an explanation that says, look, if we do A, then B, plus B, then C, there'll be a real nexus between the modification of the mile and then ultimately the revitalization of the retail space there and the modification. We can think about how we achieve those goals, but all that has been done here is that there has been a study that says This needs to happen because we want more density in the mile, but we have not built any infrastructure for it, right? With the same roads, same spaces, and the existing residents don't want more traffic going through the streets.
Is there a certain demographic that is more vocal about leaving it the same? Young, old, men, women, or is it a clear mixture of people?
Look, Coral Gables has, as a general rule, a fairly sophisticated group of residents. They're voters, they're present. You can, to the extent you want to include the students in that or not, depends, because they tend to be seasonal. But for the most part, most people are very smart. They're educated in professional classes, and what you see is you see a complete rainbow, okay, of every of every section of the residents, from 30-year-olds professionals, from 40-year-old parents, from 50-year-old longtime residents to 70, 80-year-old residents of the Gables have been there forever, who are really skeptical about the situation. And that's part of the problem here. There's a lack of trust, there's a lack of understanding, and there's a lack of because of the way this was presented by the commission, sort of try to ram it through since October. And they had to sort of moderate it. They had to open the debate. They had to come, but it was a citizen outcry that led to that. It wasn't already planned. Okay, in other words, they had to be forced in that position. So the impression that has been created is because there have been many promises made that they were going to moderate the changes, and that hasn't happened. You have the Plaza project. You have all these other projects that have gone up that are very, very tall. There's a distrust on the part of the residents of the commission. That may be fair or unfair. I think there's a lot of commissioners who have tried their darndest to be open, to speak with the residents, to meet with them, to explain themselves. But what you saw the other day is them bending over backwards to explain, okay, this is what we're trying to do. That we're not trying to create this other situation, but it was really because of the backlash. I think otherwise this would have gone through, swimming, without much debate and much moderation, which is what's undertaken. I still think it shouldn't happen the way they have done it, but the conversation is going the right way, meaning they're trying to modify it to make it smaller.
People like me that live in single-story houses that really don't see very high buildings during the regular daily occurrence. I was over at the South Miami Metro Rail station, and in the last year they added 3 floors onto that. In the morning, we used to be able to see the sun.
Right.
No mas. It's gone.
Right.
It's like, holy moly. It completely changed the other side. Right. And there's some little buildings that are over there, 1-story buildings. Right. And they at least they could look to the sky. You can't anymore.
And the thing is, look, all this development, besides that it brings, at least for the momentary period that it is being actually structured and built and put together, significant annoyance to the residents, because and to the people living there, because of all the disturbance and all the traffic and all the trucks and everything else. It also changes the landscape, right? The Wawa project that's going up, one in US 1, they're taking 3 or 4 40-year-old oaks out of their way, and this is the county right away, so they can do it without the Gables saying anything about it. The commissioners got together and they said, "Oh, wait, we'll try to resolve it. Let's try to save the trees, let's try to do something." Even though the mayor said, "Well, it's not our problem," but I think what occurred is, you see the reaction of what is lost with all this development, and every city should grow. Every city has to modify itself. I understand, I'm not obtuse, that change is part of life, but by the same token, change cannot override the tradition that is part of what we have come to love about Coral Gables. And I think it's a detriment to the city and a detriment to the residents to have this high speed of growth with, unfortunately, developers that don't necessarily have a vested interest on what the city is going to look like. They just, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing as their own self-interested business owners, which is, they're finding a way to build up this inventory that they can resell and make money out of it. But the commission should not be so worried about their rights. They should be worried about the residents' concerns.
Javier Banos, as far as parking, for these structures, have some of these people asked for variances on the parking?
Well, that is, I mean, and that's what started this whole thing, right? It was off-site parking. Now, the code does allow for off-site parking. It's not that it doesn't. Problem is, it didn't allow for off-site parking on the mile. And some of the proposals that were brought in in the last meeting, what they did essentially said, all right, you can't have a parking pedestal on the mile. You can't, and this hasn't be passed yet. You can't have any parking on the mile itself. You can do off-site parking. My concern is, all right, so the most moderate version of what was proposed was 3 stories with a rooftop, okay, just essentially with a rooftop in the back, and no parking. There's nothing that prevents a developer from coming in and saying, "Well, we'll give you a park somewhere. We'll provide some other benefit, but no parking, 6 stories. That's what we want in exchange. That's the variance we want." And that's a concern, and that's a lack of trust on the part of the residents. They see a situation where, they have been promised in the back that there will be a curtailing of this type of large development, and this is in effect a liberalization of the existing development requirement on the mile, and by creating the off-site parking provisions. And that may lead to a larger story building, at larger structures, and that's where the canning on the mile debate starts.
So how does a city and the residents find a balance? Or did the residents say, we don't want a balance, we don't want anything
Right.
more than what is there? Because isn't that the age-old challenge?
Right. But I mean, look, there was a moment in time about 20 years ago in which there was a debate, a real debate, as to whether or not there should have been an annex to City Hall. Okay, the president spoke, and the annex was demolished when 3 sitting commissioners were taken out.
A classic moment.
That's right, and it was the last time of seismic change in Coral Gables. Ultimately, it's not the commission should represent the interests of the residents and should represent the concerns of the majority of the residents. And if you have the vast majority of the populace telling you, this is what we want, okay, you should be conscious of that and have the understanding that you should follow follow that guidance, that you're essentially their representative. You're not there to be their their tutors or their and so that's where I believe if you provide a new commission a little more legitimacy, a group of folks that can generally speak and say, look, we have the best interests of the residents at heart. We're going to stop this process. We're going to go through a little more debate. We're going to go ahead and figure out if that nexus exists between what's going to go there. And if the end all solution to that is to essentially follow what this current commission has proposed, that may very well be the case. But at the base, we have done it in an open process. We have done it in a way that the new representatives of the residents who have just been voted in would have had a say in the process, and that you have everyone being heard. And that's the biggest issue. You have to get people involved, and you have to get people to be listened to. You do that, you achieve the right result because you do it with a legitimate understanding of what their concerns are.
And you're 100% right. We want to be heard.
Right.
And so that the people that are listening on the other side, when they can say, I hear you, I see you, right? I'm beginning to understand you. That's what we want in life, right? I mean, I was in therapy for 20 years. Yes. It's like, I just
psychiatry, right?
Yes, just listen to me, right? It doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong. I just want to be heard and hopefully understood.
Look, and it happens in my own practice. Sometimes I know what the solution is before the person tells me because they're giving me a little preview. And it is my job to do a little bit of psychiatry and sit down and say, all right, I hear what you're saying. Here's my proposal, what we should do about it, okay? What do you think about my proposal, and what do you think are the pros and cons? And I think that's the whole idea of being a public servant is that give and take, is that bringing in folks, is listening to residents and giving that level of service. You do that as a public official, you do that as a person who aspires to that position, and you'll be perfectly fine. And that's what our commission should be doing, and many of them do. I mean, I think some of them sometimes the position, sometimes the perspective, the optics of the way things are being done, leave residents with a bad taste.
Well, if we could divert a little bit to some really good things that are happening. I was over on Key Biscayne on Sunday. A lot of traffic, a lot of people.
Yes.
As we were going to the end of Key Biscayne, there were about 100 vehicles, waiting to launch their boats. Yeah. 3 hours later, there was still a line there. Right. The people really want to feel good about themselves. They want to go out and do things.
And we've talked about this before. There's a pent-up demand after a year of this, these closures and these imposed, seclusion that we all have, that people want to be out and about. Okay, I think if you look at what happened in Coral Gables with this Illuminate Coral Gables events that we have had, folks are going to Geralda. Folks are going out. Yes. Folks are creating, socially distanced with some degree, but they want to be able to be on and about and be free, okay, from some of these restrictions. I think as you talk to more and more people and you see that the vaccines have been especially for the class of folks that are most at risk, over the 65 and older, and as we expand that process, I think now we can go from 18 and over, I believe is what the governor said. You'll have a sense that we're getting to that finish line where we can have some semblance of what we used to have. And I think there's a lot of pent-up demand for that, and absolutely everyone should get vaccinated and keep on going.
And by the way, people do want to know about you, that you're a CPA and a lawyer. Where did you go to school?
Well, I went to the University of Florida for my law degree. I went to Florida International University for my CPA work, and it's been an interesting dilemma. Tax season last year was horrible, so because you couldn't talk to anybody. I mean, you could talk to people, you couldn't see anybody, yes, one person to person. This year, things are a little better. I think folks got used to the idea of sending things to their accountant via email and via mail, and we have to securitize and we have to create particular functions, but things are a little more smooth this year, and we don't have to close the office for 2.5 weeks.
Yes. And you're married?
Yes, I am happily married with the love of my life, Vanessa, who's also my partner.
Vanessa.
Vanessa, and we have two beautiful children who go to Santa Teresa Catholic School, Amelia and Lorenzo. And my wife has been a champion through this. I have to give it to her. I've helped. I've been there. But she is the head of the office, the head of the household, the head of everything in my arrangement. And she has managed the children with assistance. She has managed the office. She has gotten everyone, the kids are doing great in school. And we get assistance from Santa Teresa Catholic schools, but they're back full time in the school system. And so far, nobody has gotten sick. So,
and by the way, March is Women's History Month. Right?
Absolutely.
So my hat's off to the powerful women, right, that are in our lives. All right.
Absolutely.
And we have a special section that we're putting out next week in tribute to the people that are there. Yeah. And we have all these young people, especially these little girls. Sometimes they don't understand what's going to happen to them and to us in the next couple of years, where they become very influential.
Right.
And we're happy for them, and we're happy that people are getting a fair chance at being successful. So we're going to wrap it up here.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. And you're going to sign us out, looking right over there in that camera right there.
Thank you very much for all the listeners, and thank you to the communities for this wonderful opportunity to have an update on the current issues in the Coral Gables and to celebrate the wonderful March, the Women's Month. Okay. Thank you very much.
Folks, thanks so much. Tommy, thank you for your help.